Hey everyone, CJF Hotshot here, and welcome to the first part of, hopefully not too many parts, but we'll see, of the Flash major story arc tier list, going from every major story arc for the Flash, from Mark Waid's era to right now with Jeremy Adams, because the most recent arc, The Search for Barry Allen and Dark Crisis, is pretty much finished. Like, there's an epilogue to come after, and then there's of course the rest of Dark Crisis, but I feel like we're in a good state to rank that arc. So we're just going through all of the arcs from Waid to now and giving my opinion on them. So let's start off really strong with Flash, Born to Run, which I've put in Spectacular. This is Mark Waid's intro to the Flash, the 4-issue origin story for Wally West becoming Kid Flash, from the perspective of an adult Wally West who's well into his career as the Flash. Now, I like this story for many reasons. It's very much an in-depth character-focused story, like Wally delving back into his insecurities of being a child and looking up to Barry on a pedestal right away. And you can kind of see growing pains from that into like the adult Wally that's in this story and carries on through the entire run. So that's really good. Another story that's in Spectacular is the next major story arc. I know there's like a lot of issues in between, but like, yeah. Return of Barry Allen's the next major story arc. It starts off on Christmas with Wally and Jay. And then there's Wally versus Eobard, who is pretending to be Barry. If you want to know more about why I like Return of Barry Allen, and specifically why it's so important to the Flash mythos, I made a video on that. Whoopsie fucking do. So yeah, go watch that if you want. This is going to be as brief as possible. So yeah, we're starting off really strong in the Waid era with Born to Run and Return of Barry Allen. But just after Return of Barry Allen is Flash back on track. This arc is the first arc that's penciled by Mike Wieringo, and he's like one of my favorite Flash artists ever. So that's a plus. And a funny editorial fact about this book is that it came out at the same time as the wedding of Nightwing and Starfire, or the quote-unquote wedding of Nightwing and Starfire. DC editorial didn't do a good job explaining to Waid and Augustin that they weren't going to marry off Nightwing and Starfire. So there's just this alternate universe out there with Nightwing and Starfire as a married couple, and it is literally just this story. And this story is still technically canon in the sense of like Frankie going to therapy. It's just that you have to assume that Nightwing and Starfire just have to deal with each other for a bit, or it's just like Nightwing and not Starfire in like the main timeline. But it's a great story nonetheless. I just think it's funny, and it is a bit slow at first, so I did put it in good, because like it doesn't reach the highs of Robo Born to Run, but it's still really, really good. The next arc is The Flash Maximum Overdrive. This is the one with his trial. This goes through Wally's encounter with a guy called Razor, a civilian being injured in the crossfire, but Wally not really knowing about the injury until she sues him and takes him to court. Wally attempts to plead guilty, like my guy. Like, he's just like, no, I should have been able to save her. But like the jury's just like, nah. And then he beats up Kadabra at the end, and Wally pretty much has a huge reality check where he goes up to Johnny Quick and says, Johnny, I know you tried to teach me the speed formula before, but it didn't work out. You gotta teach me now. Like, I'm ready. I need it. And so, reluctantly, Johnny teaches the formula to Wally, and there's a big consequence that comes out of that, but ultimately a huge lesson for Wally, that no matter how fast he can run, no matter how many people he's saved, there's always going to be someone that slipped through the cracks, because he's still going to have to limit himself in terms of saving people in certain situations. It's a tough world, but it's a lesson that Wally had to learn. And that's really poetic. So I did, again, put it in... I put it in Spectacular, because like it's like peak storytelling, and you can also like see Wally like subtly getting faster and whirlwinding through the city. So yeah, I put it in Spectacular, where it rightfully deserves to be. Next arc, which is Flash Reckless Youth, I put in pretty much the top of good. Reckless Youth is the introduction to Bart Allen. It's leading right up to 0 Hour, where Wally disappears. This is just the introduction to Bart Allen. It's a really good introduction. People love Bart Allen. I love Bart Allen. Yeah, this is roughly when Waringo leaves the book, and where there is a drought of fill-in artists who are really good, like Carlos Pacheco. So yeah, the first arc that we're putting in top-notch tier, and this is regardless of whether it's just the 6 issues of Terminal Velocity or what I consider the main arc of Terminal Velocity, which carries through issue 0 to the main arc to 2 issues after the arc. But no matter what, Terminal Velocity is top-notch storytelling. I love it. It's my favourite Flash story ever, and you can't tell me otherwise. Like, we've got the Speedster Quintet, we've got Wally, Bart, Max, Johnny, Jay, and Jesse. That's 6 people, not just 5, 6. And we see all of the older generation trying to teach Bart, because Wally's just not getting to him the same way that Barry could get to Wally. And it's a really fascinating read, and I recommend it 100%. And like the aftermath of the arc, where even though Wally and Linda are still together and their love is stronger than ever, there's still some wounds cracking up there. Like, Linda's not absolutely sure she can trust Wally's word, because he might be more interested in protecting her rather than telling her the truth. And these are like real emotions and real issues that people go through, where you don't know who's in the right in the terms of this story, because both Wally and Linda made valid points for the actions that he took in the story, and that is magnificent. Next, we have Flash Dead Heat, which I've put in spectacular. That it's a common theme from Waid's era that I just love it so much. Dead Heat is an amazing story, alright? What Dead Heat does is that it puts Wally against an unstoppable force against an unstoppable force, being Wally versus Savitar. And Savitar drains the speed of Mike Baron era speedsters, the ones from like the, I think it was the Russian speedsters from like way back in Mike Baron's run with like the Cold War stuff going on. And he poses Savitar as a threat, because he's not fucking about. He will kill anyone and everyone to get his glorious refuge inside of the Speed Force. His place in heaven, as it were. And Wally faces off Savitar, and so do the rest of the speedsters and his cult. And it ends with both Wally and Savitar being sucked into the Speed Force. This would be amazing if it just ended up here, and this is why I've split it into 2, because I feel like it's distinct enough to where, you know, it's 2 different stories, but it's the same story at the same time, you know? But there's also the next story, which is The Flash, The Race Against Time, which is, if we're talking about stories from the Waid era, this is the lowest, and this is still in good, because ultimately we still have Wally time jumping all over the place, just trying to get back home to Linda. And that in itself is amazing, because it's an amazing premise. However, it's kind of spoiled by John Fox, who takes Wally's place as the Flash at the time, which, very nice, but then he tries to seduce Linda. We don't condone that here. We just don't. Like, he was probably gonna kill Wally by doing that, because of how Wally and Linda are, like, interlinked and connected through the Speed Force. So, yeah. But then we do have Wally just, like, ripping him into shreds at the end of the arc, just saying, no, you don't get to do that. You can take my place as the Flash. That's fine, but you don't mess with the people around me, the people I love. You don't get to take my place in that way. You can take the place of the Flash all you want, but you don't get to take the place of Wally West. And that's a powerful message to, like, put into the story. So, yeah. But it's in good, because ultimately we spend too much time on John Fox, and he just ultimately comes off as a scumbag at the end. So, oops. The next major arc is The Flash of Two Cities, which is when Wally went to Santa Marta, and it's basically like a fake city in a way. Like, they're trying to celebrate the Flash because Keystone City is broke, so they can't handle all the superhuman damages that the Flash causes by bringing all his villains to the city, even though they were coming into the city anyway. Like, that's the reason why Wally defended it in the first place. There were so many villains coming in there, and it's basically home to him and Jay, so he stepped up. But the city doesn't see it like that. But Wally moves to Santa Marta to do some hero work there, and the place burns to the ground because it's a fake place and it's designed to put Wally between a rock and a hard place. And meanwhile, Neuron, who's from like the Underworld crossover that Wally did with the Green Lantern and the rest of the JLA, is gunning for Keystone City. So Wally and Linda have to make a deal with this devil. It's very Spider-Man One More Day like. Only the power of love wins, which sounds like a very CW Flash show. The power of love is capable of anything, but actually makes sense within the story, because ultimately Wally's love for Linda is the one thing that's keeping him forward. It's keeping him driving. That's the one thing that actually brought him back to Earth. And then with Neuron at the end saying, I can't handle this. Your love is too powerful for me. I'll give it back. And then Wally and Linda are just like, nah, put everything back to normal first, and then we'll consider it. Like, that's amazing characterization. That's amazing writing from Mark Waid and Brian Augustin, who like taken over co-writing duties of The Flash at the time rather than editorially. And then Mark Waid and Brian Augustin went on break because Waid was writing Kingdom Come, Flash, Green Lantern, The Brave and the Bold, JLA Year One. He was a busy guy, and he had to write JLA as well because of the next guy that came in, Grant Morrison and Mark Millar. I'd say Grant Morrison did the heavy lifting on the next two stories because they're pretty much both neck and neck. But we'll talk about the first one first. By the way, Flash of Two Cities is spectacular, and so is Emergency Stop. Flash Emergency Stop is a tale where Wally loses his legs. Like, he goes at insane speeds, like dashing all over the place, but ultimately he gets paralyzed. So what does he do? He reintegrates the Speed Force formula that he learned from Johnny and Jesse Quick into something new. And he gains an insane power boost by being able to make his costume from the Speed Force and allowing the Speed Force to carry himself through the city rather than his legs doing all the legwork. And of course, we see the rest of the speedsters, basically desperate times call for desperate measures. Jesse's with the Titans at the time, so she can't really help. But it's amazing. I love it because this is like Grant Morrison's like, A, he's putting the Flash in a weird situation, and B, it makes sense because ultimately Wally's gonna save the day. Like, Grant Morrison's put Wally through a lot in this run, and you see that in Emergency Stop where he comes out with new resolve and a new costume, and you see this in The Flash, The Human Race, which is another amazing story, right? Because it puts Wally in an intergalactic race to prove who is the fastest person in the galaxy in the universe. However, if you break out, if you lose your stamina, if you, for whatever reason, lose your pace, you lose your grip on reality, your world gets deleted by the cosmic gamblers. And this is what Wally has to fight for. So he goes through with the race because he wants to keep the people alive, but then he realizes it's a losing bet no matter what, because no matter how much the Speed Force carries Wally, he's gonna lose steam eventually. And no matter how much he has Linda in his ears, no matter how much he has Jay in his ears, Wally is going to burn out the same way Crackle is going to burn out. But Crackle has been doing this for like 17 races. Why hasn't Crackle burnt out yet? Crackle has been channeling the power of his home world. So when they burn out, so will he. Like, they're fighting for their own survival, which gives Wally an idea, and it ultimately proves to save the entire universe, or at least Earth and Quiz, the radio world. But ultimately ends in triumph, and the Flash needing a well-deserved rest. And this is when Grant Morrison leaves the book and Mark Millar takes on full-on writing duties, because Mark Millar was Morrison's co-writer, because they were being a bit slow, hence why they needed Millar. However, with Mark Millar, he decided to do the Black Flash arc, which is very important, right? However, just because it's important doesn't mean that it's necessarily good, because it's very lacking, because it feels like everyone's out of character for the whole story, and Wally losing his powers because Linda dies is a bit, a bit shitty, I think. Like, you could say that he's not as powerful without Linda in his arms because there's no one to bridge him back. But Linda just dying in the story and then Wally being severed from the Speed Force, that's hard. And then he goes through this whole depressive arc. Like, of course, you're mourning. He's mourning, you know? He doesn't want to interact with anyone. He doesn't want to interact with the JLA. But to leave Keystone City behind and just say, I can't be dealing with this shit anymore. It's stupid. And whilst we do get some great character moments from Jay, Max, Jesse, and Bart, who went bald at the time because, you know, silly, goofy dude, we still end up getting the problem of why is Wally acting so mopey when everyone else is fully in character? Again, he's grieving. I understand that, but we have seen Wally grieve before. He doesn't mope. He gets mad. I don't know. And I don't mean this in a way of like we know how Wally grieves, and it's through perseverance and, admittedly, stupidity. He doesn't neglect everything ahead of him, you know? So yeah, I put the Black Flash arc in lacking. And also I don't like Pop Man's art, but that's not here or there. So we're on the final two arcs, and they're both in the same tier. Mark Waid and Brian Augustine come back to write The Flash Chain Lightning, starting with Wally and Linda's wedding, where, Linda came back at the end of the Black Flash arc, by the way. So it's ultimately for naught. Oh well. But Wally and Linda get married. But then they don't, because Pop Man was drawing it, and then they realised, oh no, we actually want to wait for another artist to do this wedding, so Kadabra snatched Linda up for a bit whilst we get Paul Pelletier in the book. So then they have to ultimately take down Cobalt Blue, who's threatening the entirety of the Flash legacy. And what you see throughout the Cobalt Blue arc, the Chain Lightning arc, is how well the speedsters can rally together. And it's like a full-on action-packed adventure and an Easter egg to the entirety of the Flash mythos at the time. Be it stuff that was created by Waid, created by the people who wrote the Legions of Superheroes, created by JLA writers. I know DC and 1 Million was happening at the time. Like, it just crossed over everything in anything. Like, anything that Waid and Augustine could get their hands on for the story, just to make it perfect. And then Wally disappears. And then there's this new speedster. Who's this new guy? This is the Dark Flash. And you see this in the next arc, which is the Dark Flash Saga, which sees this new Flash, the Dark Flash, having to interact with the world. Of course, his Linda died, and this version of the Flash didn't lose his powers. He went on a full-off psychopathic rampage. Oops. This is the Dark Timeline version of Wally West. He's called Walter West. And he goes on a rampage. Our Linda shows up in his world, and Walter is on the run from the police. And ultimately, Linda figures out this isn't Wally. His eyes are the wrong colour. And then our Wally comes up, and they have a brawl, and what Walter ends up doing after he thinks that Linda and Wally are dead, again, is that he comes to Wally's world to right every wrong that he's done in his life, start from a new beginning. And this is why both of these arcs are in top notch, because it's so seamless, but they're so distinctly two different stories that have characters go through. Chain Lightning is a plot story and fan servicey, right? But it's amazing fan service where it's justified, and you know, the Dark Flash Saga is a very internally character-based story that puts people through hell and back, and ultimately it ends in Wally and Linda's wedding, the real one drawn by Paul Pelletier. And that's where we're ending it off for now, because we're 20 minutes in and we've only done the Waid era. So I shall see you all soon, and next time we'll get through the Jeff Johns era and maybe a little bit beyond that. Alright, peace.